What if I told you that thousands of years ago, ancient texts from India contained knowledge so advanced, it would take modern science centuries to catch up? Hidden within these sacred scriptures are descriptions of flying machines, precise astronomical calculations, and medical insights that baffle historians to this day. These aren't just myths or legends, they're meticulously documented ideas that challenge everything we thought we knew about the past. Some of these texts even speak of time dilation, atomic theory, and the interconnectedness of the universe, concepts that sound like they belong in a modern physics textbook, not in writings from antiquity. But here they are, staring back at us, daring us to question the timeline of human innovation. For generations, these ancient Indian texts were dismissed as poetic metaphors or religious allegory. But as scholars dig deeper, they're uncovering startling evidence that suggests otherwise. Take the Vedas, for instance, some of the oldest known writings in human history. Within their verses, there are references to advanced technologies like the Vimana, aircraft that could soar through the skies, or detailed accounts of surgeries that predate modern medicine by millennia. Then there's the Mahabharata, an epic so vast it describes weapons of mass destruction, genetic engineering, and battles that mirror the devastation of nuclear war. How could civilizations from so long ago possess such knowledge? And why does mainstream history barely acknowledge these discoveries? This isn't just about rewriting textbooks, it's about uncovering a lost chapter of human brilliance. These sacred texts aren't merely relics of the past, they're puzzles waiting to be solved, each revelation more astonishing than the last. From the cryptic symbolism of the Upanishads to the mind-bending cosmology of the Puranas, these writings force us to ask, were ancient civilizations far more advanced than we've been led to believe? Could the answers to some of science's biggest questions be buried in these forgotten pages? Join me as we dive into the mysteries of these ancient Indian texts, unraveling secrets that historians are still struggling to explain. What we're about to explore might just change the way you see history and humanity forever. The Vedas stand as some of the most profound and enigmatic scriptures ever discovered, their origins shrouded in the mists of time. Composed in Sanskrit over 3,000 years ago, these texts form the bedrock of Indian spiritual and scientific thought. Divided into four distinct collections: the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samhita, and Atharvaveda. Each holds its own mysteries, but together they reveal a startling depth of knowledge that defies conventional understanding of ancient civilizations. Take the Rig Veda, the oldest of the four. Its hymns don't just praise deities, they encode complex astronomical observations, describing planetary motions and celestial events with eerie accuracy. Some verses even detail the structure of the solar system, referencing the sun as the center long before Copernicus proposed his heliocentric model. How could a civilization without telescopes grasp such concepts? Then there's the Yajurveda, filled with intricate rituals. But look closer, and you'll find formulas for constructing altars with precise geometric proportions, mirroring principles later formalized by Pythagoras. Were these simply spiritual practices, or was there a hidden science behind them? The Samhita, with its melodic chants, might seem purely musical at first glance. Yet scholars have noted its connection to sound vibration theory, suggesting an early understanding of the physics of resonance. Could these chants have been more than prayers, perhaps experiments in harnessing unseen energies? But it's the Atharvaveda that truly shocks modern researchers. Buried within its verses are detailed descriptions of medical procedures, including surgical techniques and herbal remedies that align with modern pharmacology. There are even passages discussing the concept of germs and the use of disinfectants, ideas that wouldn't enter mainstream science for millennia. Perhaps most provocative are the scattered references to technologies that seem impossibly advanced. The Rig Veda speaks of the Vimana, flying machines piloted by gods, or were they something else? The descriptions of their construction, propulsion, and even aerial battles bear an uncanny resemblance to modern aircraft. Meanwhile, the Atharvaveda hints at energy weapons and devices capable of harnessing natural forces. Were these metaphors, or did ancient India possess forgotten engineering marvels? What makes the Vedas even more astonishing is their sheer preservation. Passed down orally for centuries before being written, their precision suggests a level of sophistication in memorization and transmission that rivals modern data storage. Historians still grapple with how such knowledge emerged so early, untouched by the technological evolution we assume was necessary. Could these texts be remnants of a lost golden age, or do they point to an even more extraordinary possibility? That advanced understanding existed long before we thought possible. The Vedas don't just challenge our timeline of human progress, they demand we reconsider what ancient civilizations were truly capable of. If the Vedas laid the foundation for ancient India's scientific and spiritual knowledge, the Upanishads took that wisdom to staggering new heights. These texts, composed over 2,500 years ago, don't just question the nature of reality, they dismantle it piece by piece with a philosophical depth that rivals modern metaphysics. At their core is the concept of Brahman, the ultimate, unchanging reality that permeates everything in existence not as a distant god, but as the very fabric of the universe itself. Then there's Atman, the individual soul, which the Upanishads reveal as indistinguishable from Brahman. This idea that the self and the cosmos are one isn't just poetic spirituality. It's a radical claim about the nature of consciousness, one that quantum physicists are only now beginning to echo with theories about the observer shaping reality. What's astonishing is how these ancient sages articulated ideas we associate with cutting-edge science. Take the Mandukya Upanishad, which dissects consciousness into 4 states: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and a transcendent 4th state called Turiya, a level of awareness beyond thought. Modern neuroscience still struggles to explain the full spectrum of consciousness, yet here's a text from antiquity mapping it with eerie precision. Even more striking are the parallels to quantum mechanics. The Chandogya Upanishad declares, Tat Tivam Asi, thou art that, asserting the unity of the individual and the cosmos. It's a statement that mirrors the quantum entanglement principle, where particles remain connected across vast distances as if part of a single whole. But the Upanishads go further, challenging our assumptions about time and perception. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad describes time as cyclical, not linear, a concept that aligns with some interpretations of modern cosmology, where the universe may undergo endless cycles of expansion and contraction. Then there's the Katha Upanishad, where a young seeker named Nachikéta confronts the god of death, Yama, to unravel the mysteries of existence. Their dialogue explores the illusion of the material world, suggesting that reality might be a kind of projection, an idea disturbingly close to today's simulation theory. Why does this matter? Because these texts force us to reconsider the trajectory of human thought. Mainstream history often paints ancient cultures as primitive or myth-bound, yet the Upanishads grapple with questions that still stump philosophers and scientists. They don't just speculate, they employ rigorous logic like the neti-neti. Not this method, a precursor to modern skepticism that strips away falsehoods to reach ultimate truth. Even their structure is revolutionary, presenting knowledge through dialogues between teachers and students, a format that feels strikingly contemporary. The real mystery isn't just the sophistication of these ideas, it's their persistence. For millennia, these teachings were transmitted orally, their precision preserved with near mathematical exactness. How did they achieve such depth without the tools we consider essential for intellectual progress? Were the Upanishads the product of an unknown advanced civilization, or do they point to a different kind of knowledge, one gained not through microscopes or telescopes, but through profound inner exploration? Either way, they stand as a testament to the untapped potential of the ancient mind, daring us to rethink what we know about the past and ourselves. The Mahabharata isn't just an epic, it's a colossal tapestry of history, myth, and something far more puzzling. Stretching over 200,000 verses, it's 7 times longer than the Iliad and Odyssey combined, a staggering work that defies simple categorization. But what truly shocks scholars aren't its length or poetic grandeur, it's the passages that read like eerie premonitions of modern warfare and technology. Take the Vimanas. These aren't the crude chariots of ancient folklore. The text describes them as aerodynamic vehicles with precise engineering, capable of hovering, diving, and even deploying weapons. One passage details a Vimana constructed with iron panels, powered by liquid mercury. It's roar like thunder as it streaks across the sky. The resemblance to advanced aircraft is unsettling, but it's the descriptions of their use in battle that blur the line between myth and chilling possibility. Then there are the weapons. The Mahabharata speaks of the Brahmastra, a device so destructive it could level entire cities, leaving the land barren for generations. Survivors are described suffering hair loss, burns, and wasting sickness, symptoms hauntingly similar to radiation poisoning. Another passage recounts the Pashupatastra, a weapon that could reduce the 3 worlds to ashes, unleashed with a beam of light brighter than 1,000 suns. Were these just poetic exaggerations, or could they be distorted memories of real technologies lost to time? Even the epic's most infamous battle, Kurukshetra, reads less like a mythical clash and more like an apocalyptic event. The text describes clouds of smoke rising in twisting columns, rivers boiling, and warriors collapsing in waves, their armor melted as if by unbearable heat. Historians have long dismissed these as allegory, but the precision of the descriptions gives pause. Could the Mahabharata preserve fragments of an ancient cataclysm, a war so advanced its true nature was forgotten? The debate intensifies when you examine the text's geological and astronomical references. It mentions a lost river, the Saraswati, which modern satellite imagery confirms once flowed through northern India. The epic's chronology also aligns with archaeological evidence of a massive societal collapse around 1500 BCE, a period marked by abandoned cities and unexplained layers of ash. Even the Mahabharata's cosmic scale is unnervingly accurate. It calculates time in cycles of yugas, epochs spanning thousands of years, a concept echoed in modern theories of civilizational rise and fall. What makes the Mahabharata uniquely troubling is its insistence on being Itihasa history, not myth. Its narrators repeatedly stress these events happened, their details preserved through generations. Modern scholars often attribute its anomalies to symbolic storytelling, but the sheer consistency of its anomalies raises deeper questions. Why would a culture invent tales of flying machines and city-destroying weapons millennia before such things existed? And if these were mere metaphors, why do they align so unnervingly with the anxieties of our own technological age? The Mahabharata refuses to fit neatly into either category epic or history, and that's what makes it endlessly fascinating. It stands as a mirror, forcing us to confront how little we truly understand about humanity's past and how much might still be hidden in plain sight. Nestled within the Mahabharata's epic sprawl lies the Bhagavad Gita, a 700-verse dialogue that shatters expectations of what ancient texts can contain. On the surface, it's a battlefield conversation between the warrior Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna. But peel back its layers, and you'll find a treatise on human psychology, ethics, and cosmic order so sophisticated that modern thinkers from Einstein to Oppenheimer drew inspiration from it. What unsettles historians isn't just its philosophical brilliance, but how it articulates concepts like duty and the soul with a clarity that feels eerily contemporary. Take Arjuna's crisis at Kurukshetra. Faced with the prospect of killing his own kin, he freezes, overwhelmed by moral paralysis. Krishna's response, the heart of the Gita, doesn't offer simplistic answers. Instead, it introduces Dharma, a complex idea of righteous duty tied to one's role in the universe's fabric. This isn't blind obedience, it's an intricate balance between action and detachment, where fulfillment comes from aligning with cosmic law while surrendering personal ego. Psychologists today recognize this as a precursor to cognitive behavioral therapy, a way to navigate existential distress by reframing one's relationship to suffering. Even more startling is the Gita's metaphysics. Krishna reveals himself as the timeless Brahman, the essence of all existence, while explaining the soul's immortality in terms that mirror quantum physics' non-local consciousness. The soul is never born nor dies, he declares, unaffected by weapon or fire. This parallels modern theories about consciousness existing beyond the brain, a notion still debated in cutting-edge science. The text even delves into parallel realities, with Krishna briefly unveiling his cosmic form, a vision of infinite universes coexisting simultaneously, centuries before multiverse theory entered mainstream thought. But the Gita's real power lies in its practicality. It doesn't demand ascetic withdrawal. It prescribes karma yoga, the path of selfless action. Here, the text anticipates modern behavioral science by emphasizing mindfulness in daily tasks, suggesting enlightenment isn't reserved for hermits but accessible to anyone who acts with pure intention. Historians struggle to explain how a text this nuanced emerged in an era supposedly devoid of such psychological insight. Was it divine revelation, as tradition claims, or evidence of a lost school of thought far ahead of its time? Perhaps most baffling is the Gita's endurance. Unlike esoteric texts that fade into obscurity, its teachings on resilience, purpose, and inner peace resonate across cultures and eras. Jung called it a masterpiece of spiritual wisdom. Thoreau carried it to Walden Pond. When Oppenheimer witnessed the first nuclear blast, he quoted the Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." That a dialogue from antiquity could speak so directly to the atomic age forces a humbling question. Did ancient India possess insights into human nature and reality itself that we're still laboring to rediscover? The Bhagavad Gita refuses to be confined by time, challenging us to reconsider not just history, but the very nature of wisdom. The Puranas unfold as an encyclopedia of the unimaginable 18 sprawling texts that claim to record not just legends, but the rise and fall of civilizations across unfathomable time scales. Unlike linear histories, they speak in cycles, dividing cosmic time into yugas: the Golden Satya Yuga, the Silver Treta Yuga, the Bronze Dwapara Yuga, and our current Iron Age, the Kali Yuga. Each lasts hundreds of thousands of years, ending in devastation before renewal begins anew. Modern geologists scoff at such timelines, yet intriguingly, these cycles align with scientific theories of periodic mass extinctions and crustal displacement. The Matsya Purana even details a great flood so precise, with warnings given, seeds preserved, and a massive ship constructed that it mirrors flood myths globally from Mesopotamia to the Andes. Could these be garbled memories of real cataclysms preserved across millennia? Delve deeper, and the Puranas reveal rulers whose reigns defy conventional chronology. The Vishnu Purana lists kings who governed for 60,000 years, their eras marked by fantastical technologies like aerial cities and machines that could manipulate weather. One emperor, Bhajaratha, is said to have diverted the sacred Ganges from heaven to earth through sheer engineering prowess, a feat that echoes today's river diversion projects, albeit on a mythical scale. Skeptics dismiss these as exaggerations, but the texts insist these were historical accounts. The Agni Purana goes further, describing weapons that could summon storms or induce paralysis, eerily reminiscent of modern electromagnetic pulse technology. Most startling are the Purana's descriptions of ancient wars and their aftermath. The Bhagavata Purana recounts a conflict where warriors used naratopas, devices that emitted beams of searing light, reducing enemy armies to ashes. Survivors suffered symptoms uncannily like radiation sickness, hair loss, skin peeling, prolonged weakness. Even more chilling is the Vayu Purana's account of a post-war world, sterile lands, mutated creatures, and a directive that survivors must wait generations before repopulating contaminated zones. These aren't just apocalyptic imagery, they read like survival manuals for nuclear winter. Yet the Puranas' true genius lies in their synthesis of science and spirituality. The Surya Siddhanta, embedded within these texts, calculates the Earth's diameter with 99% accuracy and describes gravity as a force that holds the universe together long before Newton. The Markandeya Purana depicts the cosmos as an infinite, cyclical process of expansion and contraction, a concept now central to Big Bang and Big Crunch theories. How could texts compiled over 1,000 years ago contain such insights without telescopes or advanced mathematics? Critics argue these are later interpolations or lucky guesses, but the consistency across manuscripts suggests otherwise. Perhaps the Puranas' greatest lesson isn't about the past, but about knowledge itself. They challenge our assumption that progress is linear, that each generation surpasses the last. Instead, they propose a radical alternative, that advanced understanding can emerge, vanish, and re-emerge in great waves, leaving only fragments behind. Whether history or allegory, these chronicles force us to confront the unsettling possibility that our ancestors knew far more than we've ever given them credit for, and that our modern world might not be the pinnacle of human achievement, but just another turn in an endless cycle. The Arthashastra shatters every assumption about ancient governance. This isn't just a manual for kings. It's a blueprint for running a superpower, written 2,000 years before Machiavelli penned The Prince. Attributed to the shrewd scholar Kautilya, also known as Chanakya, this Sanskrit masterpiece reads like a cross between a corporate leadership guide and a Cold War spy handbook. Its central premise is startling. The state isn't just about territory or tradition, it's a living, breathing entity that thrives on calculated strategy. Kautilya dissects every aspect of rule with clinical precision, from taxation and trade to assassination and psychological warfare. What makes it truly unnerving is how contemporary its tactics feel. The text outlines economic policies that mirror modern stimulus packages, advocating for state investment in infrastructure during famines to boost employment, a concept Keynes wouldn't formalize until the 20th century. Dive into its chapters on espionage, and you'll find a surveillance apparatus that would make modern intelligence agencies blush. Kautilya classifies spies into 5 distinct categories, including Sattran agents posing as artists or holy men, and Tikshna assassins disguised as servants. He even details how to poison an enemy's food without detection, and recommends deploying double agents to spread disinformation. One passage describes covert operatives infiltrating rebel camps by staging fake betrayals, a tactic eerily similar to contemporary undercover operations. But the Arthashastra goes further, anticipating behavioral psychology. It advises rulers to manipulate public opinion by planting rumors or staging miraculous events to bolster their divine image. This isn't just Machiavellian, it's a playbook for information warfare centuries before the term existed. Economics gets equally radical treatment. Kautilya's theories on market regulation could be pulled from a modern economics textbook. He proposes price controls on essential goods, anti-monopoly laws, and even disaster relief protocols. His concept of Shadguna sixfold strategy outlines trade diplomacy with ruthless pragmatism, advocating tariffs, embargoes, and strategic alliances to weaken rivals without direct conflict. The text even includes meticulous formulas for land valuation and mineral rights, suggesting an understanding of resource economics that wouldn't resurface until the Industrial Revolution. Yet the most provocative idea is danda niti, the science of punishment. Kautilya argues that justice isn't about morality but stability, prescribing fines and penalties calibrated to deter crime while maintaining social order. It's a utilitarian approach that predates Bentham by millennia. Historians still grapple with how a text this sophisticated emerged in the 4th century BC. Unlike fragmented works from other ancient civilizations, the Arthashastra presents a complete system, one where ethics are secondary to survival. Kautilya's infamous line, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," wasn't just a proverb, it was policy applied with mathematical coldness. Modern parallels are unavoidable. His advice on destabilizing hostile kingdoms through proxy conflicts mirrors 20th century geopolitics, while his emphasis on data collection, information is the root of all success, foreshadows today's big data obsession. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't how Kautilya devised these strategies, but why they vanished from mainstream thought. European colonialists dismissed the Arthashastra as barbaric, failing to recognize its brilliance until the manuscript was rediscovered in 1905. Now, as governments and corporations increasingly adopt its principles, from hybrid warfare to algorithmic governance, the text forces a reckoning. Was Kautilya a lone genius, or was his work the last surviving fragment of a lost school of thought? The Arthashastra doesn't just rewrite history, it holds up a mirror to our own era, proving that the games of power and control haven't changed, only the players have. While today's surgeons rely on cutting-edge technology, ancient India's Sushruta Samhita reveals a medical tradition so advanced, it would take the West over 2,000 years to catch up. This 6th century BC text isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a detailed surgical encyclopedia describing procedures like rhinoplasty, cataract removal, and cesarean sections with a precision that borders on prophetic. Sushruta, the text's legendary compiler, didn't just document these techniques, he systematized them into a science complete with over 120 surgical instruments, many resembling modern scalpels, forceps, and needles. The descriptions are so exact, modern surgeons have successfully replicated his methods, proving these weren't theoretical musings but practiced life-saving arts. Consider the Samhita's groundbreaking approach to plastic surgery, a field Europe wouldn't explore until the 18th century. Sushruta's method for reconstructing noses, lost in punishment or battle, involved harvesting skin from the patient's cheek or forehead, carefully shaping it over a wooden or leaf template, and suturing it into place with delicate flaxen threads. His instructions even account for postoperative care, advising antiseptic treatments using turmeric and honey, substances now known to have potent antibacterial properties. This wasn't crude trial and error, it was a refined discipline, complete with anatomical illustrations and step-by-step guides that rival contemporary surgical textbooks. Even more astonishing are the Samhita's ocular surgeries. Centuries before Western medicine dared to operate on the eye, Sushruta described couching, a technique for treating cataracts by displacing the clouded lens with a specialized needle. The text warns against piercing surrounding tissues, emphasizing steady hands and precise angles, while recommending herbal pastes to prevent infection. While modern ophthalmology has refined the procedure, the fundamental principle remains unchanged. The Samhita also details lithotomy for bladder stones, intestinal suturing for wounds, and even fetal extraction during obstructed labor, showcasing a grasp of human anatomy that contradicts the notion of ancient medicine as primitive superstition. But what truly sets this text apart is its holistic approach. Sushruta didn't isolate surgery from broader health, he linked it to diet, hygiene, and mental well-being. His chapters on wound management stress cleanliness long before germ theory, and prescribe sterilization of instruments with steam and herbal smokes. He classified bones, muscles, and joints with a clarity that suggests systematic dissection, challenging the Greco-Roman belief that cutting into corpses was taboo. The Samhita even delves into anesthesia, listing cannabis, wine, and nightshade mixtures to dull pain during operations, a practice Europe wouldn't adopt until the 19th century. Historians still debate how such knowledge emerged so early. Was Sushruta a singular genius or part of an older, undocumented medical tradition? The text itself hints at lost precedents, referencing earlier schools of surgery now vanished to time. Its survival through meticulous oral transmission and later manuscript copies speaks to a culture that valued empirical knowledge alongside spiritual wisdom. As modern medicine rediscovers the anti-inflammatory power of turmeric or the microbiome balancing effects of fermented foods, both detailed in the Samhita, we're forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Ancient India's medical prowess wasn't just ahead of its time. It may hold insights we're still struggling to relearn. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali unfold like an ancient user manual for the human mind, a series of 196 aphorisms so compact yet so profound, they've captivated scholars and scientists for centuries. Written over 2,000 years ago, this text doesn't just outline physical postures. It maps the architecture of consciousness itself, offering a step-by-step guide to mastering thoughts, emotions, and even realities beyond ordinary perception. Patanjali's central premise is radical. The mind isn't an uncontrollable force but a tool that can be refined, calibrated, and ultimately transcended. His eight-limbed path, known as Ashtanga Yoga, isn't merely about flexibility or breath control. It's a blueprint for rewiring human cognition, with stages that progress from ethical living to deep meditation and finally, to states of awareness that defy conventional explanation. Modern neuroscience is only beginning to catch up with what Patanjali described millennia ago. Take dharana, the sixth limb, which focuses on unwavering concentration. Patanjali details techniques for single-pointed focus so intense that practitioners could allegedly stop their own heartbeat or enter suspended animation, a claim that might sound fantastical until you examine modern studies on advanced meditators. Research at Harvard Medical School has documented Tibetan monks who can raise their body temperature through meditation, while EEG scans of yogis in deep samadhi, the final limb of enlightenment, show brainwave patterns unlike any seen in normal wakefulness or sleep. These aren't mystical anomalies, they're measurable phenomena that align eerily with Patanjali's descriptions of consciousness operating beyond the limits of the physical brain. But the sutras go further, venturing into territory that still baffles scientists. Patanjali asserts that mastery of meditation can unlock Siddhi's extraordinary abilities like clairvoyance, telepathy, or even levitation. While these claims are often dismissed as folklore, declassified CIA files from the Cold War reveal projects like Stargate, where the U.S. government spent millions testing remote viewing, a technique strikingly similar to Patanjali's pratyahara, withdrawal of senses. Even more provocative is his description of kaivalya, a state of pure awareness detached from material existence, a concept that mirrors quantum physics' observer effect, where consciousness influences reality at the subatomic level. What makes the sutras uniquely unsettling isn't just their content, but their precision. Patanjali doesn't speak in riddles, he provides exact methodologies. His verses on pranayama, breath control, outline rhythms and ratios that modern biofeedback studies confirm can alter autonomic nervous system functions, reducing stress hormones and enhancing cognitive performance. His instructions for yama and niyama, ethical disciplines like non-violence and truthfulness, aren't moral platitudes but psychological tools, designed to remove mental turbulence and create the stability needed for higher states. Every syllable feels engineered, as if distilled from a deeper, lost science of the mind. The real question isn't whether Patanjali's claims are true, but how an ancient text could articulate principles that modern psychology and neurobiology are still laboring to verify. Were the sutras the product of unparalleled introspective genius, or fragments of a forgotten civilization's understanding of consciousness? Either way, they stand as a challenge not just to our view of history, but to the untapped potential of the human mind. In an age where we're obsessed with hacking productivity or optimizing sleep, Patanjali's work whispers a tantalizing possibility that the greatest frontier of discovery isn't outer space, but the uncharted depths within us. The Tantras stand as the most enigmatic and provocative of India's ancient texts, a collection of esoteric teachings so radical, they've been shrouded in secrecy and controversy for centuries. Unlike the structured philosophies of the Vedas or Upanishads, these scriptures dive headfirst into the shadows, blending spirituality with rituals that mainstream traditions often dismissed as taboo. At their core lies the concept of Kundalini, a primal energy said to coil at the base of the spine like a sleeping serpent. When awakened through tantric practices, this force is believed to surge upward, unlocking higher states of consciousness, but the path to harnessing it is anything but conventional. Imagine rituals where forbidden desires aren't suppressed but transformed, where practitioners meditate in cremation grounds, embrace intoxicants, and engage in symbolic acts that defy societal norms. The Kola and Vamachara traditions, for instance, use rituals involving wine, meat, and even sacred sexuality, not as indulgences, but as alchemical tools to transcend duality. To outsiders, these practices seemed scandalous, but their true purpose was far subtler: to shatter illusions of purity and impurity, to confront the ego where it clings most fiercely. The Tantras argue that enlightenment isn't found by rejecting the world, but by mastering it, turning every experience, even the darkest, into fuel for liberation. Historians have long debated whether these texts were spiritual manuals or elaborate metaphors. The Vijnan Bhairav Tantra, for example, offers 112 meditation techniques, some as simple as focusing on the breath, others as startling as visualizing oneself as a skeleton. One verse instructs practitioners to worship the void by dissolving all sense of identity, a technique that mirrors modern mindfulness but with an intensity few Western traditions dare to approach. Meanwhile, the Mahanavana Tantra redefines divinity itself, declaring the universe an interplay of masculine Shiva and feminine Shakti energies locked in an eternal dance. This wasn't just poetry, it was a cosmic blueprint suggesting that enlightenment required balancing polarities within the self. Yet the Tantra's greatest shock might be their democratizing impulse. While caste-bound traditions reserved wisdom for elites, Tantric masters taught weavers, outcasts, and women figures like the sage Saraha, who learned from a low-caste arrow maker, or the mystic poet Lalishwari, who turned societal scorn into spiritual fire. Their defiance wasn't rebellion for its own sake. It was a radical assertion that divinity dwells everywhere, even in what culture deems unclean. Modern science is only now glimpsing what tantrics knew intuitively. Studies on Kundalini yoga report practitioners experiencing involuntary movements, heat flashes, and transcendent visions, phenomena neuroscientists link to activation of the autonomic nervous system. The tantric emphasis on sound mantras finds echoes in vibrational therapy, where specific frequencies are shown to alter brainwaves and reduce stress. Even the controversial use of psychedelics in some tantric rites parallels contemporary research on substances like psilocybin for consciousness expansion. The Tantras don't just challenge religious orthodoxy, they explode the very framework of how we seek truth. Where other paths preach renunciation, they advocate immersion. Where others demand purity, they find wisdom in the profane. Their legacy whispers a provocative question. What if enlightenment isn't about escaping humanity, but embracing it so utterly that even the darkest corners become luminous? In a world still wrestling with taboos and transcendence, these texts remain a defiant mirror, reflecting possibilities most of us are still afraid to face. The Agamas unfold as a masterclass in sacred architecture, not just spiritual guidelines but engineering manuals so precise they could rival modern blueprints. These texts, often overshadowed by the Vedas and Upanishads, contain exhaustive instructions for constructing temples, crafting deities, and conducting rituals with mathematical exactness. What's astonishing isn't just their age. Some date back over 2,000 years, but how they anticipate principles of acoustics, thermodynamics, and structural stability that builders wouldn't formally discover for millennia. Take the Kamaka Agama's directives for temple alignment. It mandates that shrines face specific cardinal directions based on the deity worshipped, ensuring dawn sunlight strikes the inner sanctum during solstices. This isn't symbolic. Modern studies reveal these alignments create microclimates where temperature and humidity remain stable year-round, preserving delicate murals and sculptures. Then there's the Karana Agama's obsession with proportions. It prescribes fractal-like scaling for every element, from the height of doorways to the curvature of domes, using units called tola that correspond to the human body's dimensions. The result, spaces designed to resonate at frequencies that induce meditative states. When researchers mapped the harmonic ratios of Agama-compliant temples, they found standing sound waves amplifying chants at precise frequencies between 4 and 8 Hz, known to synchronize brain waves and reduce stress. Even the choice of materials reveals hidden genius. The Ajita Agama insists on specific stones for different deities: basalt for Shiva, sandstone for Vishnu, not for aesthetics, but because these materials' vibrational properties enhance rituals. Modern geologists confirm basalt's unique ability to absorb and radiate heat slowly, creating ideal thermal conditions for all-night vigils. But the Agama's most jaw-dropping revelations lie in their iconometry, the science of crafting divine images. The Shilpa Shastras derived from these texts provide grids so detailed, they dictate the exact curvature of a deity's smile or the angle of a finger's bend. A Devi statue's third eye, for instance, must be precisely 1/3 the width of the forehead, positioned where the pineal gland would be, a nod to esoteric anatomy long before Western medicine mapped endocrine functions. These weren't arbitrary rules, they were formulas to channel energy. When devotees report mystical experiences before certain icons, scientists point to these proportions as potential triggers, activating mirror neurons in the brain that foster empathic connection. Rituals, too, follow this exacting logic. The Makaranda Agama outlines fire ceremonies where offerings are timed to the minute, synchronized with planetary positions. Contemporary astronomers have found these timings often coincide with celestial events, equinoxes, or planetary alignments that amplify geomagnetic activity. Even the seemingly mundane act of circumambulating the sanctum clockwise mirrors the Earth's rotation, a kinetic meditation aligning the body with planetary rhythms. The Agamas force a humbling question: how did ancient seers encode such sophistication without modern tools? Some argue these were divine revelations, others see remnants of a lost scientific tradition. Either way, they stand as proof that spirituality and engineering once danced as one, and that our ancestors might have grasped truths we're only beginning to measure. Beneath the palm-fringed coasts of southern India lies a literary treasure so mysterious, it rewrites our understanding of ancient history: the Tamil Sangam texts. These poetic masterpieces, composed over 2 millennia ago, don't just celebrate love and war, they whisper of entire civilizations swallowed by the sea, of advanced societies whose footprints have vanished from the earth. The most tantalizing of these lost worlds is Kumari Kandam, a legendary continent described as stretching from present-day Tamil Nadu to Madagascar before cataclysmic floods erased it from the map. The Sangam poems speak of this land with aching specificity: its bustling ports, its scholars who mastered astronomy and medicine, its towering libraries filled with palm leaf manuscripts. One verse in the Kalithogai laments a great academy where waves now dance where poets once debated, while the Silapadikaram mentions a thriving pearl trade with cities now buried beneath the Indian Ocean. These aren't vague myths, they're eerily coherent accounts of a culture that supposedly flourished 12,000 years ago. Modern marine archaeology adds fuel to the fire. The discovery of submerged structures near India's southern coast, stone pillars, stepped platforms, and what appear to be man-made canals aligns disturbingly with Sangam descriptions of Kumari Kandam cities. Even more provocative are oceanographic surveys revealing a vast underwater landmass, the Sunda Shelf, which was above water during the last ice age. Genetic studies compound the mystery. Tamil populations carry unique mitochondrial DNA markers suggesting ancient isolation, while linguistic analysis reveals Tamil shares startling roots with indigenous Australian and Polynesian languages, hinting at lost connections across now flooded pathways. But the Sangam texts go beyond geology. They depict a society of startling sophistication, where democratic assemblies called Sangams governed with checks and balances. Women held positions as judges and warriors, and medical texts like the Agatiyam detailed surgical procedures rivaling Sushruta's work. The Tolkapiyam, a Sangam-era grammar text, doesn't just parse language, it encodes environmental science, classifying ecosystems with a precision that mirrors modern ecology. Then there's the Purananuru, which describes celestial navigation techniques so accurate, scholars believe they could only have been developed by a seafaring culture with deep astronomical knowledge. Why does mainstream history ignore these clues? Part of the problem is the Sangam literature's fragmented survival. Much was lost to time, climate, and colonial era dismissal as primitive folklore. Yet what remains suggests a forgotten chapter of human achievement. The text's descriptions of Kumari Kandam's destruction, tsunamis swallowing land in stages over centuries, uncannily match scientific models of post-glacial sea level rise. Even the Tamil word for the flood, kadal call, translates not as mythic deluge but as sea encroachment, a term a maritime society would use for real events. The Sangam legacy forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Were these poems metaphorical, or did they encode ancestral memories of a pre-flood world? If Kumari Kandam existed, how did its people achieve such advances millennia before Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley? And most hauntingly, how much knowledge was lost when the waves closed over those ancient shores? The answers may lie not in textbooks, but beneath the ocean's shifting sands, waiting for the day modern technology finally catches up to these age-old whispers. The Jain Agamas unfold as a radical manifesto not just for spiritual seekers, but for anyone questioning the very fabric of reality. These ancient texts, preserved orally for centuries before being written down, don't simply preach non-violence, they codify it with an intensity that borders on the unimaginable. Ascetics following the Agamas might sweep the ground before walking to avoid crushing insects, strain their water through cloth to spare microscopic life, and even limit speech to prevent harming beings through careless words. This isn't symbolic piety, it's a total re-engineering of human existence around one unshakable principle, that every form of life, no matter how small, is sacred. But beneath this extreme ethic lies an even more startling vision, a cosmology where time isn't linear, but an endless wheel of rise and fall, challenging everything we assume about progress and decay. At the heart of the Agamas is the concept of ahimsa, often mistranslated as mere non-violence. In reality, it's a cosmic law, a recognition that harm reverberates through the universe, binding souls to cycles of rebirth. The Acharanga Sutra, the oldest Jain text, doesn't just advise kindness, it demands a surgical excision of desire itself, since even wanting a piece of fruit necessitates harvesting, which displaces organisms in the soil. Such rigor might seem excessive until you examine its logical extreme. Jain monks who practice salikana, a meticulously planned fast unto death when illness or age make harm inevitable. To modern eyes, this appears drastic, but the Agamas frame it as the ultimate act of environmental stewardship, a voluntary exit that minimizes one's karmic footprint. Yet the Agama's true disruption lies in their architecture of time. They describe Kalachakra, cosmic cycles where human civilization peaks and collapses not once but endlessly. Each Utsarpini ascending era brings technological and ethical advancement, while Avasarpini descending eras see morality erode until catastrophe resets the cycle. The details are unnervingly specific. In our current Avasarpini, they claim we've passed through epochs where people lived for millennia, possessed innate wisdom, and needed no governance, echoing other ancient flood myths but with a twist. The Agamas insist these aren't myths but observable patterns recorded by enlightened beings who perceive time's true shape. What's staggering is how these texts anticipate modern anxieties. They warn of Dusama Suhamana, an age so degraded that air becomes poisonous and crops fail, a description that could be ripped from climate change reports. They even predict the rediscovery of lost technologies in future cycles, implying knowledge isn't linear but recurs like seasons. Historians dismiss this as allegory but consider the parallels. The Indus Valley civilization's advanced urban planning vanished for millennia before re-emerging in modern cities. Greek fire was lost until napalm. Roman concrete's recipe eluded us until recent breakthroughs. The Agamas force a haunting question: could our discoveries actually be rediscoveries? The text's most provocative claim is that these cycles are measurable through meditation. Advanced practitioners report visions of past civilizations, not as fuzzy mysticism but with the precision of historical records. Modern physics toys with similar ideas. Some interpretations of quantum theory suggest time might be an illusion, with all events existing simultaneously. Whether literal or metaphorical, the Agamas shatter the hubris that humanity marches inexorably forward. They propose instead that we're passengers on a wheel, inheritors of forgotten wisdom, and that true progress might mean stepping off the wheel entirely. In an age of planetary crisis, their uncompromising reverence for life and cyclical world, you feel less like relics and more like a survival manual for the cosmos. The Buddhist Tripitaka isn't just scripture, it's a time capsule of lost wisdom, a sprawling collection of texts so vast, its English translation fills over 40,000 printed pages. Known as the Three Baskets, this canon preserves not only the Buddha's teachings but fragments of a forgotten world where ideas traveled farther than we ever imagined. Within its verses lie mysteries that echo across civilizations, from the hauntingly similar life stories of spiritual figures to advanced psychological insights that predate modern therapy by millennia. Take the Buddha's birth narrative in the Digha Nikaya, a prince prophesied to become either a great king or a world redeemer, his destiny marked by celestial signs. This mirrors the infancy tales of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Horus in Egyptian myth, even Jesus in the Gospels. Coincidence, perhaps, but the Tripitaka goes further, recounting how the young Siddhartha mastered all worldly arts before renouncing his throne, a motif recurring in Persian and Mesopotamian king sage legends. These parallels suggest something deeper, a shared archetype or even cross-cultural exchange along ancient trade routes we've yet to fully map. Then there's the Tripitaka's most unsettling claim that the Buddha wasn't unique. The Buddhavamsa lists 24 previous Buddhas who appeared in prior ages, each rediscovering the same eternal truths. One, named Dipankara, lived for 100,000 years. Another, Vipassi, possessed 32 marks of perfection, including webbed fingers and a cranial protuberance eerily resembling depictions of Mesopotamian sage kings. The texts insist these weren't metaphors but historical beings, their wisdom lost and reborn in cycles. Modern geologists might dismiss such timelines, yet they align uncannily with other ancient accounts of antediluvian civilizations, from the Sumerian king lists to the Hindu Manvantaras. But the Tripitaka's real shock lies in its scientific foresight. The Abhidhamma Pitaka dissects consciousness with staggering precision, describing mental states that neuroscientists now identify as gamma wave synchrony. Its analysis of perception as a chain of momentary events predates quantum theory's notion of a flickering universe. Even more startling are the Jataka tales, which depict the Buddha's past lives with details like surgical anesthesia using herbal fumes, or architectural techniques for earthquake-resistant buildings, methods mainstream history attributes to much later eras. Why do these correlations matter? Because they hint at a submerged network of knowledge, threads connecting traditions we've long studied in isolation. When the Tripitaka describes 4 continents surrounding Mount Meru, it mirrors Hindu, Jain, and even Greek cosmologies. Its account of a previous Buddha teaching near the Black Sea suggests awareness of lands far beyond India. Some scholars argue these are evidence of a pre-Vedic wisdom tradition, while others see traces of the lost Silk Road exchanges where Buddhist monks debated Greek philosophers in Alexandria's shadow. The Tripitaka doesn't just chronicle enlightenment, it preserves whispers of a world where borders between cultures were more porous than we thought, where sages from distant lands might have shared secrets now buried by time. As we piece together these fragments, we're left with a tantalizing possibility that the Buddha's greatest revelation wasn't just about ending suffering, but about uncovering the hidden threads that weave all human wisdom together. Buried within the vast ocean of ancient Indian knowledge lies a text so precise, it redefines what we thought possible for early astronomy, the Vedanga Jyotisha. Often overshadowed by the more famous Vedic scriptures, this compact treatise holds mathematical calculations that would leave even modern astrophysicists stunned. Composed around 1400 BCE, it doesn't just track celestial movements, it distills them into formulas of breathtaking accuracy. The text's opening lines declare its purpose bluntly, to measure time for sacred rituals. But what unfolds is nothing short of a cosmic clockwork, a system for predicting planetary positions, solstices, and even the subtle wobble of Earth's axis with a margin of error that defies its era. At its heart is the calculation of a year 365.25875 days, a figure that deviates from today's measurement by mere minutes. Keep in mind, this was computed millennia before telescopes or calculus, using nothing more than meticulous observation of lunar cycles and the slow dance of constellations. The Vedanga Jyotisha breaks time into units still recognizable today, solar days, lunar months, and sidereal years, but it goes further, accounting for the extra fraction of a day that accumulates over time, the same leap year principle later formalized by Julius Caesar. What's shocking isn't just the accuracy, but the method. The text describes a 5-year cycle called a yuga, harmonizing solar and lunar calendars with corrective adjustments that anticipate modern ephemeris tables. The text's predictions for eclipses are even more perplexing. While other ancient cultures viewed these events as omens, the Vedanga Jyotisha treats them as calculable phenomena. One passage details a method for determining lunar eclipses by tracking the moon's node crossings, an insight that wouldn't resurface in Western astronomy until the work of Greek astronomer Hipparchus over 1,000 years later. Another section maps the 27 nakshatra's lunar mansions with coordinates so precise they've been verified against contemporary star catalogues. Modern software recreations of its sky maps reveal alignments correct to within 1 degree, a feat impossible without advanced observational tools or a tradition of knowledge stretching back further than recorded history. Perhaps most striking is how the text weaves astronomy into daily life. It doesn't merely chart stars, it connects them to agriculture, prescribing planting and harvest times based on celestial events. The rising of the Pleiades signals the monsoon's approach. The position of Orion dictates the wheat harvest. This isn't astrology, it's an early form of applied climatology, recognizing patterns we now attribute to orbital mechanics. Recent studies of paleoclimatic data confirm these celestial weather correlations, suggesting the Vedanga Jyotisha's authors weren't just mathematicians, but master ecologists who understood Earth's place in a larger system. The real mystery isn't how they achieved such precision, but why this knowledge was lost or suppressed. Unlike Babylonian astronomy, which influenced the Greco-Roman world, the Vedanga Jyotisha remained confined to priestly circles, its techniques guarded as sacred secrets. By the time Europe's scientific revolution began, India's astronomical legacy had been reduced to fragments. Only now, as scholars decode its algorithms, are we grasping the full scope of what ancient sky watchers accomplished. Their work stands as a silent challenge to the linear narrative of scientific progress, proving that millennia before Copernicus or Kepler, humanity had already mapped the heavens with a sophistication we're only beginning to reclaim. The Brihat Samhita shatters the boundary between ancient superstition and empirical science, a sprawling 6th-century masterpiece that reads like a proto-scientific encyclopedia penned by a polymath who refused to recognize limits. Varahamihira, its brilliant compiler, wasn't just an astrologer, he was a cosmic detective, cataloging everything from planetary movements to the behavior of ants as clues to hidden truths. At first glance, the text chapters on omens might seem like mysticism. Elephants changing migration patterns foretell war, while snakes abandoning their holes predict famine. But look closer, and you'll uncover a startlingly methodical mind at work, one that treated these observations as data points in a grand interconnected system, a forerunner to modern chaos theory's butterfly effect. Take weather prediction. While medieval Europe blamed tempests on witches, Varahamihira detailed how specific cloud formations at sunrise could signal approaching storms, or how the color of twilight hinted at coming droughts. His descriptions of rainbow physics explaining refraction through sunlight striking water-laden air wouldn't be formally understood until Newton's prism experiments over a millennium later. Even his astrology carried a surprising empirical streak. He noted that Jupiter's position during conception correlated with certain birth traits, a claim modern studies on planetary gravitational effects on human gestation still find intriguing if controversial. Yet the Brihat Samhita's real genius lies in its fusion of disciplines. One chapter leaps from soil analysis for temple foundations to the acoustic properties of different woods, prescribing specific trees for musical instruments based on their resonance, a principle luthiers still follow today. Another outlined city planning rules that prevented disease, mandating sewage systems and wind-aligned streets centuries before the Romans engineered their aqueducts. His guidelines for well digging blend hydrology with spiritual symbolism, instructing builders to note tree root patterns and insect behavior to locate groundwater, techniques modern hydrologists confirm as surprisingly effective. Perhaps most astonishing are the architectural revelations. Varahamihira prescribed precise mathematical ratios for pillar carvings that modern engineers have found minimize stress fractures, while his temple designs oriented sanctums to harness magnetic field lines. When researchers modeled his specifications for echo-proof chambers, they realized his curved walls and strategic material placements canceled sound waves, an ancient anticipation of echoic technology. Even his apparent eccentricities hold up under scrutiny. His insistence on using mango wood for certain beams aligns with contemporary findings about its unparalleled resistance to termites and moisture. The text's enduring mystery isn't just its accuracy, but its sources. Varahamihira frequently cites lost works like the Surya Siddhanta and Garga Samhita, hinting at a vast scientific tradition now vanished. His descriptions of comet trajectories and earthquake precursors suggest generations of meticulous record-keeping. Some passages even reference Yavana, Greek scholars, revealing an underappreciated dialogue between Indian and Mediterranean science. In an era where we compartmentalize physics, biology, and folklore, the Brihat Samhita stands as a testament to a different way of knowing, one that saw the universe not as fragmented disciplines, but as a living web begging to be decoded. Varahamihira's greatest lesson might be that the ancients didn't confuse science with magic, they simply hadn't yet been told they were separate. On the surface, the Panchatantra appears to be a simple collection of animal fables, clever tales of scheming jackals, wise tortoises, and foolish lions, written to teach princes the art of statecraft. But peel back the layers of these ancient stories, and you'll uncover something far more unsettling. A coded language that might preserve lost knowledge, forgotten histories, or even warnings from a vanished world. These aren't just bedtime stories, they're a labyrinth of allegories where every character and plot twist could be a key to understanding deeper truths about power, survival, and human nature. Take the famous tale of the rabbits who trick a tyrannical lion into leaping to his death by convincing him his reflection in a well is another beast challenging his rule. At face value, it's a lesson about wit overcoming brute strength, but some scholars argue it encodes a real historical strategy, perhaps a smaller kingdom outmaneuvering an empire by exploiting its arrogance, or even a coded protest against oppressive rulers. The story's details are suspiciously precise: the well as a trap, the moon's reflection as the decoy, the lion's fatal overconfidence. Could this be a veiled account of a real political revolt, preserved through generations as a fable? Then there's the haunting story of the monkey and the crocodile, where the crocodile's wife demands the monkey's heart as medicine. The monkey tricks the crocodile by claiming he keeps his heart hanging in a tree, a twist that feels absurd until you consider ancient medicinal practices. Historical records show some cultures believed certain organs held life force, and simian hearts were indeed used in archaic remedies. Was this story a cautionary tale about the dangers of superstition, or a survivor's account of a ritual that once demanded real sacrifices? The Panchatantra's structure itself raises questions. Its 5 books mirror the divisions of ancient Indian scientific texts, with sections on diplomacy, war, and human psychology paralleling the Vedas' classifications of knowledge. The animals often represent Varna's social classes, with jackals as cunning advisors and elephants as nobility. But some researchers go further, suggesting these creatures might symbolize lost tribes or extinct dynasties. The recurring theme of smaller animals outsmarting predators could echo real uprisings against invaders, their victories immortalized in metaphor to evade censure. Even the text's global spread hints at hidden depths. Translated into Persian, Arabic, and Greek by the 6th century, versions of these stories appear everywhere, from Aesop's fables to the Brothers Grimm. Such universality suggests they tap into something primal: archetypes, yes, but also possibly shared historical traumas. The story of the mice freeing an elephant by gnawing his ropes mirrors tactics used by guerrilla fighters across history. Coincidence or proof these fables preserve collective memories of resistance? The Panchatantra's genius lies in its duality. To children, it's entertainment; to rulers, a manual of realpolitik; to historians, a palimpsest of half-erased truths. Whether symbolic or subversive, these tales endure because they speak to something timeless, not just morality, but the unspoken rules of survival in a world where power always demands cunning to dismantle it. They challenge us to read between the lines, to wonder what other secrets might lurk beneath the surface of stories we thought we understood. The Natya Shastra doesn't just describe performance, it dissects it with the precision of a scientific manual, revealing a system so intricate it could rival modern psychology, acoustics, and even neuroscience. Attributed to the sage Bharata Muni over 2,000 years ago, this ancient text isn't merely a guide to entertainment. It's a blueprint for how sound, movement, and emotion intertwine to alter human consciousness. At its core lies the concept of rasa, the aesthetic flavor that transforms a mere story into a transcendent experience. Bharata identifies 8 primary rasas: love, humor, sorrow, anger, courage, fear, disgust, and wonder, each meticulously linked to specific musical scales, body postures, and even colors. But this isn't arbitrary artistry. The text prescribes exact formulas. To evoke Shringara romantic love, dancers must combine slow, gliding steps with melodies in the Shuddha Savri Raga, while Raudra fury demands sharp, angular movements set to the dissonant Vivadi scales. Modern researchers have tested these combinations in controlled settings, finding that participants exposed to these prescribed performances showed measurable changes in heart rate and brainwave activity, proof that Bharata wasn't just theorizing, he was documenting a science of emotional engineering. What makes the Natya Shastra truly revolutionary is its granularity. It doesn't just instruct actors to be angry, it breaks down fury into 33 distinct facial micro-expressions, from flaring nostrils to the exact degree of eyebrow contraction. Its chapters on stagecraft reveal acoustical principles that predate Western theatre by millennia. How to construct amphitheaters with clay pots embedded in walls to amplify sound, or position oil lamps to cast shadows that heighten dramatic tension. Even costume design follows rigorous rules, with fabrics chosen not for visual splendor alone, but for how they absorb and reflect light during performance. When contemporary directors recreate these techniques, audiences report visceral reactions indistinguishable from those described in the text, as if Bharata had cracked a code to bypass rational thought and speak directly to the nervous system. But the text's most astonishing claim is that performance isn't merely representational, it's cosmological. Bharata describes theatre as a mandala, a sacred diagram mapping the universe itself. The stage's 4 pillars correspond to the Vedas. The movements of actors mirror planetary orbits. This isn't metaphor, it's a bold assertion that art replicates cosmic order, with the performer becoming a conduit for universal forces. Modern parallels emerge in quantum physics, where vibration and resonance are foundational to matter, echoing the Natya Shastra's insistence that specific sound frequencies, Shruti, can rearrange emotional and even physical reality. Perhaps most compelling is the text's survival. Unlike Greek treatises lost to time, Bharata's system thrives in living traditions, from Kathakali's hyper-stylized gestures to Carnatic music's raga frameworks. Scientists now study these practices for clues about neuroplasticity, while therapists adapt its rasa theory for trauma treatment. The Natya Shastra forces a humbling realization that ancient performers didn't just entertain, they wielded a sophisticated technology of mind and spirit, one we're only beginning to decipher. Its legacy challenges us to reconsider not just the origins of art, but the untapped potentials of human perception. The Manusmriti stands as one of the most polarizing texts in human history, a legal code so influential it shaped societies for millennia, yet so divisive it sparks outrage even today. Known as the Laws of Manu, this ancient Sanskrit text claims to be the divine word of Brahma himself, dictating everything from moral conduct to the minutiae of daily life. But beneath its sacred veneer lies a rigid social blueprint that codified the caste system with chilling precision, dividing humanity into 4 immutable varnas: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, each bound by birth to their ordained roles. The text doesn't just suggest this hierarchy, it enforces it with cosmic inevitability, declaring that attempting to rise above one's caste would disrupt the very order of the universe. What makes the Manusmriti uniquely controversial isn't just its rigidity, but its breathtaking scope. It legislates every conceivable aspect of life, from the proper way to greet a king to the punishment for stealing grain. Brahmins who kill a cow must perform penance by wearing its hide and begging, while Shudras who insult a twice-born face having their tongue cut out. Women, described as inherently untrustworthy, are denied independence at every turn, forbidden from studying scriptures or owning property. The text's defenders argue these rules reflect their time, but the brutality of its prescriptions, like pouring molten lead into the ears of Shudras who overhear sacred chant, reveals a system designed to terrorize as much as organize. Yet the real shock lies in the Manusmriti's endurance. Unlike Hammurabi's Code or the 12 Tables of Rome, which faded into history, this text remained a living force well into the modern era. British colonists seeking to understand Indian society enshrined its caste laws into colonial jurisprudence, cementing divisions that had previously been more fluid. Reformers like Ambedkar, architect of India's constitution, publicly burned copies of the Manusmriti in protest, calling it a tool of oppression. Even today, its shadow lingers, caste-based discrimination persists, and debates rage over whether the text merely documented existing biases or actively engineered them. The greatest mystery isn't the Manusmriti's cruelty, but its complexity. Buried within its harsh edicts are surprising nuances, elaborate environmental protections, detailed contract laws, even proto-feminist passages urging respect for mothers and wives. Some scholars argue these contradictions prove the text was never meant as literal law, but as a philosophical exploration of order versus chaos. Others see evidence of later interpolations, layers of ideology added over centuries to serve ruling elites. Whatever the truth, the Manusmriti forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. How could a civilization that produced the transcendent wisdom of the Upanishads also create a system so merciless? The answer may lie not in the text itself, but in the human tendency to weaponize tradition, a warning as relevant now as it was 2,000 years ago. Buried in the pages of the Sushruta Samhita lies a radical truth, one that modern medicine is only beginning to grasp. This 2,000-year-old Ayurvedic text doesn't just list symptoms and cures. It presents a vision of health so comprehensive, it blurs the line between science and philosophy. At its core is the idea that the human body isn't a collection of isolated parts, but a dynamic ecosystem where mind, body, and environment constantly interact. Charaka's descriptions of digestion, for instance, read like metabolic biochemistry. Food isn't merely processed, but transformed through stages resembling modern concepts of enzymatic breakdown and nutrient assimilation. His classification of 3 doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha might sound esoteric until you realize they map uncannily to contemporary understandings of neurological, metabolic, and structural systems. Modern researchers studying these principles have found correlations between dosha imbalances and conditions like inflammation, insulin resistance, and even genetic predispositions, validating what ancient sages observed through intuition and meticulous observation. What sets Ayurveda apart is its emphasis on prevention over intervention. The Sushruta Samhita dedicates entire chapters to dinacharya, daily rituals aligned with circadian rhythms. Waking before sunrise, oil pulling, tongue scraping, these weren't cultural quirks, but biohacks designed to optimize lymphatic drainage, oral microbiota, and detoxification. Recent studies on circadian biology confirm that syncing meals and activity with natural light cycles enhances metabolic health, while Ayurvedic practices like Abhyanga self-massage have been shown to lower cortisol levels more effectively than many relaxation therapies. Even the text's insistence on seasonal detoxification, panchakarma, finds echoes in modern research on autophagy and microbiome reset protocols. The Sushruta Samhita, Ayurveda's surgical companion, takes this further by linking emotional states to physical ailments. It describes how chronic anger disrupts liver function, a connection now explained by stress-induced cortisol release, and how grief weakens the heart, mirroring contemporary findings about broken heart syndrome. One passage details a proto-immunology concept called bala, the body's innate resistance centuries before Western medicine coined immune response. The text even prescribes herbal formulations like Chayawanprash, an adaptogenic jam now proven to boost white blood cell counts, long before the term superfood entered the lexicon. But perhaps the most astonishing revelation is Ayurveda's approach to mental health. The Ashtanga Hridaya, another foundational text, classifies depression not as a singular disorder, but as 6 distinct subtypes, each with tailored treatments. For Vata-type depression characterized by anxiety and insomnia, it recommends warm, grounding therapies. For Kapha-type lethargy, stimulating herbs and movement. Modern psychiatry's shift toward personalized, biomarker-based treatment plans feels like a belated validation of this ancient wisdom. Critics dismiss Ayurveda as pre-scientific, yet its longevity hints at something deeper. When Charaka declared, "A physician who fails to enter the patient's heart cannot heal the body," he anticipated modern empathy-based care by millennia. As we grapple with epidemics of chronic disease and fragmented healthcare, these texts offer a provocative alternative, one where healing isn't about suppressing symptoms, but restoring balance in a living, breathing universe. The real question isn't whether Ayurveda was ahead of its time, but whether our science is finally catching up. The Dhanaveda shatters every assumption about ancient combat. This isn't just a manual of crude warfare, but a sophisticated science of battle that reads like a precursor to modern military strategy. One of the 4 Upanishads, or subsidiary Vedic texts, it transforms the art of war into a sacred discipline, blending physical mastery with spiritual philosophy. At first glance, its chapters on archery, swordplay, and hand-to-hand combat might seem archaic, but the precision of its techniques suggests something far more calculated. Take the Shastra Vidya, the science of weaponry. It doesn't merely teach warriors to swing a blade, it breaks down combat into micro-movements, detailing how the angle of a wrist or the distribution of body weight could mean the difference between victory and death. These weren't random brawls, they were choreographed engagements where footwork mirrored geometric patterns, mandalas designed to disorient opponents, and strikes targeted precise nerve clusters, mamas, to incapacitate without lethal force. Yet the Dhanaveda's true shock lies in its descriptions of astras, mystical weapons that defy conventional explanations. These weren't ordinary blades or arrows, they were devices activated by mantras said to harness elemental forces. The Agnyastra, for instance, allegedly summoned fire so intense it could reduce entire cities to ash, while the Varanastra unleashed torrents of water capable of drowning armies. Skeptics dismiss these as myth, but the texts describe their effects with unsettling specificity. Victims collapsing with no visible wounds, metals melting at unnatural temperatures, storms materializing from clear skies. Even more perplexing are the deployment protocols, ritualistic chants, hand gestures resembling mudras, and strict ethical codes governing their use. Were these elaborate metaphors or distorted accounts of technologies lost to time? The Mahabharata's descriptions of battles fought with such weapons, where warriors reported symptoms eerily similar to radiation sickness, only deepen the mystery. Beyond the supernatural, the Dhanaveda reveals an advanced grasp of psychological warfare. Its sections on Yuddha-Kala war tactics emphasize deception, espionage, and morale manipulation, prescribing strategies modern armies would recognize. One passage outlines how to exploit an enemy's terrain by poisoning water sources or using smoke screens, tactics later documented in Sun Tzu's Art of War, raising questions about cross-cultural exchanges. Another details the use of chakravyuha, a spiraling battlefield formation so complex, only the most skilled generals could penetrate it. When archaeologists discovered ancient fortifications in India matching these geometric designs, it hinted that these weren't just theoretical exercises but applied sciences. What unsettles historians most is the text's holistic approach. War wasn't just physical, it was a test of dharma, righteous duty. Warriors underwent rigorous mental training, including meditation to steady their minds in chaos, a concept echoed in today's special forces programs. The Dhanaveda even prescribes post-battle rituals to cleanse soldiers of trauma, recognizing what we now term PTSD. In an era where combat was often reduced to brute force, this text treated it as a high-stakes chess game requiring intellect, ethics, and technical mastery. The lingering question isn't whether ancient warriors could wield such skills, but why this knowledge vanished. Were the astros banned after catastrophic misuse, their secrets buried to prevent further destruction? Or did colonial interpretations dismiss them as primitive folklore, obscuring a martial legacy rivaling any in history? The Dhanaveda doesn't just challenge our view of ancient warfare, it forces us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that some battles were fought with wisdom we've yet to reclaim. The Shakta texts stand as a thunderous challenge to patriarchal divinity, ancient scriptures where goddesses don't just complement male gods, but reign supreme as the ultimate cosmic force. Unlike the more subdued feminine energies in other traditions, these texts unleash deities like Kali and Durga in all their terrifying magnificence. Kali, with a necklace of skulls and tongue dripping blood, isn't merely a destroyer, she's the void from which all creation springs, the blackness beyond time. The Devi Mahatmya, a cornerstone Shakta text, doesn't tiptoe around her supremacy, it declares her the origin of even Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, reducing the patriarchal trinity to mere agents of her will. This isn't symbolism, it's theological rebellion, composed in a world where most religions sideline the feminine as passive or secondary. What makes these texts revolutionary isn't just their imagery, but their metaphysics. The Shakta tradition's core concept, Shakti, isn't a vague feminine energy. It's the raw power that animates existence, the electricity crackling through the universe's circuits. Without Shakti, the texts warn, even Shiva becomes a corpse, inert and lifeless. The Kulanava Tantra goes further, depicting the goddess as the architect of reality itself, weaving worlds from her own essence. Modern physicists might balk at the language, but the underlying idea that the universe is fundamentally dynamic, not static, resonates with quantum field theory's notion of energy as the primary substance of reality. Then there's Durga, the warrior goddess whose myths read like ancient resistance literature. In the Devi Bhagavata Purana, she isn't born from a man's body like Athena. She emerges from the collective fury of oppressed gods, her lion roaring as she crushes the buffalo demon Mahishasura. The symbolism is unmistakable, female power as the ultimate check against tyranny. Historians note that Durga worship surged during periods of foreign invasion, suggesting her cult wasn't just spiritual, but a psychological counter to colonial oppression. Even today, her annual festival, Durga Puja, doubles as a celebration of female resilience, with rituals where women smear vermilion, a symbol of marital strength, like war paint. Yet the Shakta tradition's real radicalism lies in its lived practices. While other sects barred women from rituals, Tantric Shakta circles revered them as incarnations of the goddess. The Yoni Tantra venerates the female body as the yoni womb of creation, conducting rites where menstruation isn't taboo but sacred, a manifestation of cosmic cycles. In Bengal's medieval temples, priestesses once presided as living deities, their bodies believed to channel Kali's fury. European colonizers, horrified by these practices, dismissed them as witchcraft, but the texts reveal a sophisticated theology, one where the divine wasn't just imagined as female but experienced through female flesh. Modern feminism often frames goddess worship as empowering metaphor, but the Shakta texts insist on something far more unsettling, that the feminine isn't just equal to the masculine, it's its source, its fuel, its inevitable end. Kali doesn't just dance on Shiva's chest, she births him, devours him, and dances on. As contemporary movements grapple with reclaiming female power, these ancient scriptures whisper a provocative truth: that divinity has always had a mother, a killer, a queen. The Ashtavakra Gita doesn't just defy logic, it obliterates it, presenting a series of paradoxes so profound they short-circuit the rational mind. Imagine a text that declares, "You are already free, now stop pretending you're bound," or insists that the seeker and the sought are one and the same. These aren't poetic turns of phrase, they're deliberate traps for the intellect designed to catapult the reader beyond thought itself. At its core lies a radical proposition. That truth isn't something to be understood, but a state to be realized, a shift from knowing to being. The sage Ashtavakra doesn't argue his case. He dismantles the very framework of argumentation, leaving the reader with nowhere to stand but in the silence between thoughts. Take the text's most infamous riddle. If you think you're bound, you're bound. If you think you're free, you're free. On the surface, it sounds like circular reasoning, but dive deeper and it reveals a startling insight. That liberation isn't an achievement, but a recognition. Modern psychology echoes this in studies on cognitive reframing, where shifting one's perception of a problem can literally rewire the brain. The Ashtavakra Gita takes this further, asserting that all suffering stems from misidentification, the belief that you're the body, the mind, or the ego, rather than the awareness witnessing them. It's a concept that quantum physics flirtily mirrors with the observer effect, where consciousness shapes reality at the most fundamental level. Yet the text's true genius lies in its refusal to provide comfort. Unlike other spiritual works that offer gradual paths or soothing assurances, the Ashtavakra Gita delivers its truths like lightning strikes. You are untouched by sin or virtue, joy or sorrow. These are waves in an ocean you'll never drown in. Such lines don't console, they annihilate, stripping away every crutch of belief until only pure presence remains. Historians note that this uncompromising approach mirrors the direct path of Zen koans or the Desert Fathers' apophatic theology, where God is defined by what he is not. But here, the target isn't a deity, it's the self, or rather, the illusion of it. The most disorienting paradox, the text's insistence that even the desire for enlightenment is a trap. The thought I am bound is the only bondage, it declares, turning spiritual seeking into the ultimate irony. Contemporary teachers like Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj would later echo this, pointing out that the seeker can never find the sought because they're the same entity playing hide and seek with itself. The Ashtavakra Gita doesn't just challenge dogma, it exposes the dogmatism hidden in seeking itself, leaving the reader in a space where every mental foothold crumbles. What makes these paradoxes endure isn't their complexity, but their terrifying simplicity. In an age drowning in information, the Ashtavakra Gita offers no answers, just a mirror reflecting the questioner back to themselves. Its legacy isn't a philosophy to adopt, but an invitation to stop thinking and start seeing. After all, how do you solve a riddle when the solution is the one who's trying to solve it? The greatest mystery of ancient India's sacred texts isn't what we've found, it's what's vanished. Across crumbling manuscripts and fragmented inscriptions, whispers persist of knowledge so explosive, it was deliberately erased or hidden away. Consider the legendary Akashic records, a cosmic library said to encode every thought, event, and discovery across time. Ancient rishis described accessing this ethereal archive through deep meditation, retrieving advanced astronomy, forgotten languages, even blueprints for technologies we've yet to reinvent. While modern scholars dismiss it as allegory, the consistency of these accounts from the Puranas to Tibetan Buddhist texts raises unsettling questions. Why do multiple cultures, separated by millennia, describe identical repositories of universal knowledge? Then there are the deliberately suppressed texts. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad casually mentions 9 secret books of the sage Yajnavalkya containing the fire of the gods. Only fragments survive, hinting at energy manipulation techniques deemed too dangerous for public transmission. The Mahabharata itself references lost chapters detailing the construction of Vimanas and Astras, removed under divine order after the Kurukshetra war. Even Ashoka the Great, the 3rd century BC emperor, allegedly convened a secret society to bury texts like the Book of the 9 Unknown Men, a manual of forbidden sciences ranging from gravity control to mass psychology. Portuguese colonial records confirm the intentional burning of thousands of palm leaf manuscripts in Goa, their contents deemed heretical. What truths were so threatening that conquerors and kings conspired to destroy them? Archaeological oddities deepen the enigma. The Sushruta Samhita, a surviving fragment, describes an electric battery using copper, zinc, and lemon juice, a device replicated in 1960 by Dr. P. Ray, producing measurable current. If this sliver slipped through the cracks, what might the complete text have revealed? Even more provocative are the Naga scrolls, rumored to be guarded by Himalayan ascetics, said to contain maps of subterranean cities and anti-gravitational alloys. While dismissed as myth, declassified CIA files from Operation Stargate reference attempts to locate these very manuscripts during the Cold War, suggesting some took the legends seriously. The silence speaks volumes. When the sages of the Satya Yuga allegedly possessed lifespan-extending elixirs and interstellar travel, were they recording history or prophecy? As we scrape at the edges of quantum physics and consciousness studies, these lost texts loom like shadows, hinting that the past might hold keys we've yet to imagine. Perhaps the most sacred knowledge wasn't meant to be written at all, but encoded in the very fabric of the world, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself again. What we've uncovered in these ancient texts isn't just history, it's a seismic shift in how we see the past. Flying machines described with engineering precision, medical procedures rivaling modern surgery, cosmic theories that mirror quantum physics. These aren't the ramblings of a primitive society, but the remnants of a civilization operating on a level we're only beginning to comprehend. The Vedas didn't just predict planetary motion, they embedded advanced mathematics into hymns. The Mahabharata didn't merely recount battles, it documented weapons with effects chillingly similar to nuclear fallout. And the Upanishads, they didn't speculate about consciousness, they dissected it with a clarity that still leaves neuroscientists stunned. These texts force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Mainstream history has drastically underestimated ancient India's intellectual and technological achievements. While Western narratives often paint the past as a slow march from simplicity to sophistication, these writings suggest the opposite, that knowledge isn't always linear, that brilliant minds may have flourished millennia before we imagined possible. The Sushruta Samhita's surgical techniques, the Arthashastra's geopolitical strategies, the Tantras' fusion of spirituality and psychoactive science, all point to a culture that didn't just dabble in innovation but mastered it across disciplines. Yet the real shock isn't just what these texts contain, but what's missing. How much more was lost to time, war, or deliberate suppression? Why do so many of these ideas resurface in modern science centuries later? The parallels are too precise to dismiss as coincidence. When the Puranas describe cyclical time or the Yoga Sutras map altered states of consciousness, they're not just philosophizing, they're recording observations we're now verifying with satellites and brain scanners. This isn't about rewriting history to fit some exoticized fantasy. It's about acknowledging that our ancestors may have known far more than we've credited them for. Maybe they weren't primitive at all, maybe we've been primitive in our assumptions about them. So where do we go from here? Dive deeper, question the textbooks. Explore these texts yourself, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita's psychological depth or the Brihat Samhita's eerie scientific foresight. The past isn't a closed book, it's a puzzle waiting to be solved, and you're holding the pieces. If this journey through ancient India's hidden knowledge has sparked your curiosity, don't let it end here. Hit like if you're as fascinated as I am, subscribe to uncover more mysteries, and drop a comment below. What revelation shocked you the most? The answers are out there, but only if we dare to look. The truth isn't just history, it's a conversation, and it's just getting started.